Good morning, JNUC. How you guys doing this morning? All right, thanks. You guys are here for App Auto Patch. Rob and Andrew are going to walk you through that. After the session is done, we'll have some Q&A if there's time. I'll run around with a mic and try not to sweat all over everybody as I'm running around. So without further ado, Robert and Andrew.
Thank you. Good morning.
Well, good morning, JNUC. My name is Robert. I'm a senior Apple engineer at my organization, where I've been working a lot exclusively on automating and improving workflows for our Apple computers and devices. My background in managing Apple devices spans across higher education, MSPs, and enterprise environments. Previous to working on Apple devices, I was a Windows sysadmin. I saw the light, came over, started managing Apple in about 2012 with Mountain Lion as the OS. And today I do have the privilege of presenting with my co-presenter, Andrew, one of the key contributors on the App Auto Patch project. So, Andrew, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Robert. Hello, I'm Andrew. Kind of the same thing. Work in my organization, just automating a lot of our workflows with our devices, just trying to make the best user experience possible. Been working with managing Macs probably for about the past 6 or 7 years. Always been kind of a hybrid with working Windows and Mac, except for the past 6 years, pretty much just purely Mac. So it's been a fun journey. Been working with IT management for, oh gosh, I don't know, I would say since I was 5, but it's been a fun journey. So, so today we're excited to share a project with you that we've been working on called App Auto Patch. This project is designed to streamline the process of patching third-party apps on macOS by automating app patching. We've been able to reduce security risks, improve compliance, and save time for both our support teams and our end users. This project is open source on GitHub, available on GitHub, and we'll be walking you through how it works, why we built it, and how you can start using it in your environment.
Is there already admins in here using App Auto Patch in your environment? Ah, cool, awesome. Anybody just hate it? Okay, awesome. All right, so we'll go ahead, scroll through our agenda for today. We're going to do a quick overview on App Auto Patch, spend some time reviewing some of the configuration variables that are available there, talk about how to go through deployment, some of the future development that we're looking at doing, and then we'll open it up for sharing our resources and some Q&A. So what is App Auto Patch, right? So this project began with a challenge. At my organization, I was challenged with coming up with a way to patch all of our third-party apps, right? Through the discovery of the applications that are installed, I found over 2,500 app titles across our environment, which I came to the conclusion was not a feasible number to just patch, right? It's not just, hey, let's go use Jamf app installers, which is awesome for, I think there's almost 200 apps, but that definitely wouldn't cover our 2,500 app titles in our environment. So I remember I was sitting down, I was actually talking to Dan, and thought, hey, wouldn't it be really cool if we could patch apps and give users a dialogue, using Swift Dialogue, as a means to notify them what's going on with their computer and their patching process, right? And so we kind of worked together, kind of came up with some ideas. And so App Auto Patch was designed to simplify and automate the entire app patching process, right, for us as Mac admins. It streamlines what can be a time-consuming and manual task, turning it into something that is both efficient and scalable. So App Auto Patch uses Swift Dialogue and Installmator as 2 integrations into the project. Swift Dialogue for end user notification, and Installamator to go through the discovery of applications and attempt to patch those applications. So at the very beginning, App Auto Patch was heavily inspired by another project called Patchomator, which is a continuing project. And at App Auto Patch's core, it uses Installamator. As you may all know, it's a giant script with a huge repository of app labels. So it's what I thought the biggest repository of applications in the Mac admin's environment, right? So it was a good place to start there. And so yeah, so it uses Installamator with specific app labels to help the update those applications. And ultimately, our goal was to provide a solution that not only addresses the complexity of patching in large environments, but also gives Mac admins a more automated and reliable way to maintain security and compliance.
So App Auto Patch has 3 main phases to function. The first is going to be the discovery phase. So the script goes through and checks installed applications against labels in Installamator. It compares the versions to determine if updates are needed. Applications with newer versions are queued for updates. This phase also compares the list of queued apps against app label variables that we have in the script to add or remove labels as needed based on certain scenarios. The second phase is a deferral check. So the script checks if you have deferrals enabled, and if so, prompts are displayed using Swift Dialog to display the list of apps that need to be patched and the number of deferrals remaining. The function also checks for any display assertions, such as screen sharing, like they're on a Zoom call or a meeting, and can automatically defer and not bother the user if that's needed. And then finally, the installation phase is executed. Any applications that are queued, it'll download and install those updates. So this is the kind of the basic workflow, including deferrals. That's really hard to see. Yeah, I'm going to jump on this side real quick. So basically, the script starts, goes through some pre-flight checks to make sure that the script structure is set up, so it'll create some plist files and all the folders that are necessary for it to run. And then it'll check a variable to see if you have interactive mode enabled, and we'll explain that in a bit. If it is, it'll go through and set up the dialogues that it needs to display. If not, it'll completely skip that process. So then it's going to go through the discovery phase. So it'll go through, scan all the applications that are installed on the user's device, compare them against in the actual Installamator labels, and if it's there, it'll do a version check and basically prepare the list of applications. Then it'll go through and check if you have deferrals enabled. If it is, then it'll check if you have any deferrals available. So obviously the first time, it'll just display however many you have. If not, it'll skip that process. So if they are enabled, it'll prompt that user to defer or continue. So if the user decides to defer, it'll go and deduct the number of available deferrals and then just close out the script, and we'll just kind of wait until you have it scheduled to run the next time. If they decided to continue, it'll go through to the installation phase and download all the applications using the Installamator labels and do the installation. There's some post-installation work which sets up some different keys in the plist, like if patching was completed. So we kind of have it set up so you can do like a patching cadence, like if you want to do it weekly, it'll set that information and just kind of close everything out and tidy everything up.
So next, we'll just talk about the end user experience, right? So App Auto Patch was designed to give end users an experience during the app process, right? So we ended up using Swift Dialog, which is something that we already had in our environment with some other existing projects during our enrollments and things like that. So it was a good segue to create these dialogues for App Auto Patching. So we did design App Auto Patch to have different behaviors for the user experience, right? Because not every org is the same. And so we do have an option for a completely silent run. With this setting, the script just runs in the background, no Swift dialog dependency needed. And it'll go through the discovery and the patching of applications without any user interaction. So that can kind of keep minimizing disruptions low. So one key call out there, though, is since App Auto Patch is using Installator, if you do completely want a just all silent run through, you will need to update your Installator parameters because Installator does notify the user if an app is open, right, to close the app and do the things. So just be wary of the Installator parameters that you're passing as well. So the second option is kind of a hybrid. So it has a silent discovery and then an interactive patching dialog. So this is pretty neat because not all users want to necessarily see the discovery of applications going on their computer, and not all admins want their users to see that, right? So the discovery happens silently in the background. It builds the plist, does what it needs to do there, does the version comparisons as it analyzes each app that's installed, and then queues up the updates. That's when it's presented to the user with the list of available updates. And the user, if deferrals are available, it'll ask them to defer or not, process the update, and it'll give them that list of updates and kind of give them transparency there. And then we have a fully interactive one, right? So here the user sees everything. They see the app discovery, they see the deferral options, they see the patching process as it's going on. So, you know, for transparency reasons, this is kind of what we use at our org, just so that a user can know when this is running on their computer, they can see what's being analyzed, and they can see the actual patching process there. So each mode was designed to provide the right level of interaction depending on the organization's needs, ensuring that patches are applied efficiently without unnecessary interruptions. And so we'll look at a little bit of a screencast here on what this actually looks like. So here we're showing fully interactive mode in action. As you can see, the dialog here displays each application that is being discovered and analyzed in real time. So this gives the user visibility into the process, ensuring that they're aware of what's happening on their machine. Another nice feature here, with some recent developments with Swift Dialog, this can actually be just minimized. So if the user just wants to drop it down, they can. And it'll keep working. So here is the prompt here for deferrals. So if deferrals are enabled and App Auto Patch detects any applications that require updates, users will see this prompt right here. The dialog lists the applications that need updates, allowing the users to save their work before continuing with the installation. And you know, they can defer in case they need to. If they're working on something and they can't just process the update right now, they can always just defer it, or they can continue on. By default, if the timer runs out before the user makes a choice, it'll just continue onto the installation phase. And here's what the installation phase looks like. So here, the users are shown a dialog with the list of applications being patched, along with real-time updates on the download and installation status for each app. If any update fails, the dialog will display the failure status next to the affected application, so users and admins are aware of any issues that might need attention. So this phase really does offer transparency to the users, letting them know which apps need attention, which apps need updated, and what the status there is. And then next, Andrew will talk about the actual configuration of App Auto Patch.
So as mentioned before, App Auto Patch scans for apps matching all possible labels, but does allow for a more tailored approach using three categories: ignored, required, and optional labels. So for ignored labels, anything that matches in this list will be completely ignored. This category does accept wildcards. So for example, you could include the word Microsoft with an asterisk afterwards, which would ignore all labels that begin with Microsoft. Additionally, you can add a single wildcard to this category to ignore all apps, letting you pick and choose different apps using the required and optional category. So for required labels, any labels added to this will be force installed or updated, regardless if the app is installed or not. So this can be beneficial for required business apps that need to be installed, even if a user were to remove it. So for some reason they decide they don't want Microsoft Outlook, they delete it, but you do want it on their device, you can have it in there so it'll force reinstall it even if they do remove it. Optional labels will install or update applications only if the app is installed. So this category comes in handy for the scenario of ignoring all applications and patching only a set list of applications only if they exist on the device. So when adding the script to Jamf, there are a set of variables there are a set of variables that use Jamf parameters to more easily customize patching scenarios. So parameter 4 is going to be for the interactive mode, 0 is for silent, 1's for silent discovery and interactive patching, and 2 is for completely interactive. Parameters 5, 6, and 7 are the 3 installator label categories for ignored, required, and optional. Parameter 8 allows for a separated list of options to override the default installator options, such as blocking process action and installator notifications. And then parameter 9 is for setting the deferral mode. The default is disabled, but setting it to any integer will enable the deferral mode and set the maximum number of deferrals that are allowed. So within the script, there are several feature variables that can be hard-coded, the majority of which are for the deferral options. So the first is going to be the deferral timer. This is going to set the amount of time in seconds given to the user to respond to the deferral prompt. So if you only want to give them a few minutes or if you want to give them an hour, you can set that up there. The deferral timer action, this is going to determine what happens at the end of the deferral timer. So if there are deferrals remaining, you can either set it to automatically defer or continue the installation phase, depending on what you want to happen for the user. The next 2 variables are based on 2 calculated fields, patch status and patch start date, which are useful for like a patching cadence. For example, let's say you want to run everything on a weekly basis, like weekly patching cadence. So the users need to successfully patch apps at some point at least once every week. So the patch status is going to be a true or false flag, indicating if patching has been completed or not for your patching cadence. And then the patch start date is going to be the date that the patching cadence begins. So that's going to be set when the day that the script first runs. So kind of go back to the variables a bit. The first is the days until reset. This is going to indicate the number of days after that patch start date to reset that patch status flag. So let's say you wanted to reset every week, you'd set it to 7. So 7 days after that patch and cadence started, it would set it back to false. So then they would have to, the script would run again and prompt them to patch. The patch week start day, this allows you to set the patch start date to a specific day of the week. So if you want to keep everyone on the same patching cadence, for example, let's say if you set this to 3, the patch start date would be set to the most recent prior Wednesday. So let's say if a Mac is offline for a few days and the script runs for the first time on a Friday, that start date would go back retroactively to that Wednesday. So keeping all of your users on the same patching cadence, kind of like a patch Tuesday scenario. So you want from Tuesday to the following Monday, all of your patching to begin. And finally, we've got the max display assertion count, which sets the number of times deferrals are allowed for display assertions, so such as screen sharing or if they're in a meeting. So you can set how many times it would automatically defer and not display anything for the user based on those scenarios.
Yeah, so another feature that we've added into App Auto Patch is functionality for webhooks. So this would allow you to add a webhook URL for services like Slack or Microsoft Teams. And that'll enable real-time notifications. So anytime that App Auto Patch finishes a cycle, or any failures are detected, right? There's also some configuration there on what you can be on what you want to be notified on. Then your team would be informed, right? So in our org, I have a webhook going to Microsoft Teams, just so every time App Auto Patch runs, I know that it has, and I can see the applications that were patched. If there were any failures, this is really good in the case where an app label and Installamator needs to be updated. We'll start seeing similar failures on apps, and then we can go back and do like a PR for the Installamator project, right, and get those app labels updated, and we can start seeing success on certain app labels once again. So here is an example, a screenshot of what one of these notifications configured for Slack looks like. And so you can see, you know, and obviously you can configure whatever information you want to populate here, but we put in the serial number and computer name, the model of the computer, the user. If there were any errors, they'd be there. The computer, the updates that were processed, and the computer record. This is unique, so the computer record will just be a hyperlink to the actual computer record in your Jamf Pro instance. So super easy just to kind of click in there and you can start diving into what's going on that machine. So in addition to all that we've talked about, there are some other variables that can be customized and give you more control over how App Auto Patch actually runs, right? So one option, you can automatically pull in the latest script version based on the version date in Installamator, right? So Installamator has releases that they put out, but that's not necessarily the latest version of the script in the Installamator repo, right? So we've added the functionality to look at the script date on the Installamator script to make sure that when you're pulling in those app labels, they're the most updated in the Installamator project. So that's one feature, for example. There's also the option for handling apps located outside of or inside of the user's home directory. So you can either ignore these apps entirely, you can convert them to go into the default application directories. So there's management there. And all of these features, they're on the wiki inside of the App Auto Patch GitHub. So feel free to browse that resource and figure out which configuration is going to work for your guys' environment. But yeah, it's because there's quite a bit there. There's a list there. I'm sure that these slides will become available and you can go through.
So real quick, just to get started with App Auto Patch, obviously you're going to upload the script to Jamf and then set your parameter labels. And next you'll go in and create a new policy, configure the general payload to set your name and your default options like trigger, execution frequency. I usually set mine to a recurring check-in once daily, since I do like a weekly patching cadence for ours. After that, you'll configure the script payload to use the App Auto Patch script that you uploaded, and then set the parameters for how you want the script to function. Finally, you'll set your scope and test. Now, if you're using deferrals, one thing to keep in mind when you're testing with that, if you test it and you go through and complete patching, it's going to set that patch completion status to true. So if you try and run it again, it's not going to run. It's just going to exit out. So what you can do is either set the value in the plist to false so it'll run again, or you can just delete the plist file altogether, because when the script runs again, it'll recreate that and set everything up for you the next time it runs. This is an example Jamf policy with script parameters configured. This is for silent discovery and interactive patching, so it's set to 1. And then I've got a list of app labels to ignore. I know I've got some Microsoft ones in there, one password. There's a few things that, especially our developers, they really don't like their IDE apps touched at all. So I have all those listed to make sure that they're not patched, otherwise they yell at me. And then I've got some standard installer options, and I've got deferrals set to 2, so it'll allow them to defer 2 times.
Cool, and so future development, we're continuing to improve App Auto Patch. Our focus is shifting to the next major version, which will be 3. And we're really looking forward to introducing more features and enhance the automation process of App Auto Patch. So we're trying to expand app compatibility, provide deeper integration with other tools, and we're also gathering feedback from users and other contributors to kind of help steer the ship, right, on what Mac admins want to see this project do in their environments. Our goal is to keep refining the patching process, make it more efficient and customizable for us as Mac admins, while continuing to provide a seamless and secure experience for our end users. And then I'll pass over to Andrew to talk about kind of specifically what we're looking to do in version 3.
So our next major version is going to be 3.0, which is going to include several enhancements for both the end user and Mac admins. 3.0 is going to be able to be managed using a configuration profile, either deployed via MDM or locally. So you'll be able to configure the settings using either configuration profile or command line triggers. Who's familiar with the Superman script? Okay, it's going to be very similar to that. So how you configure Superman with either configuration profile or command lines, you'll be able to basically do the same thing with App Auto Patch. It's going to be MDM agnostic, so it's going to allow you to deploy it to devices and have it run independently. So you can either initially trigger it from Jamf and then just let it run and do its thing. A launch daemon is going to be used for all the automation and scheduling. There will still be the option to trigger it via Jamf policy, like the current version, but the launch daemon will take over, so the Jamf binary isn't tied up running the process. Very similar to what Superman does. And then 3.0 has enhanced deferral options, allowing you to defer by count or days, and customize those deferral and dialogue timeouts.
And I think we're pretty close to beta, yeah.
Pretty close. Hopefully soon. Hoping by maybe the end of this week, next week, soon.
And if anybody wants to get in on that, just send me a message. Love for you guys to try it out and get your guys' feedback on version 3. So, yeah, so we'll wrap up with some resources that can help you dive deeper into App Auto Patch. We do have our GitHub repository. It's no longer under my personal repository. It's under an App Auto Patch organization repository. And so I'll have the QR code up there that can take you there. That has complete documentation, including setup instructions, screenshots, customizable options, and the wiki. So I encourage you to explore the project, contribute if you can, if you want to. Provide feedback. We're continuing to develop and enhance it based off of feedback. I just want to say App Auto Patch definitely would not be where it is today without those in the Mac admins community, right? So definitely want to give a shout out there. So resources, here are some, like I promised. My blog, Tech It Out, has an App Auto Patch redirect link to the latest post about it. And a QR code there to take you there. The App Auto Patch wiki, as you can see, under the App Auto Patch organization repository. Mac admin Slack, so we do have an App Auto Patch channel there. We're active in there. We try to answer questions as best as we can. So I encourage you to go into there if you do find any kind of issues or anything like that. Please report them so that we know. And any PRs are welcome on the repository itself. So we want to know your experiences. We want to know what will help you do your jobs better, because selfishly it'll make our jobs better, right? So Now, I would like to open the floor to questions that you may have. So, are there any? Nope, lost opportunity, no questions. Just kidding.
Is there a way, because you get
There's a microphone coming just really quick. I want to make sure everyone can hear.
When you saw the screen recording you did of the different apps that pop up that are available for update, is there a way for the end user to select some and not all, or is it like a defer all or accept all?
Currently, it's a defer all or accept all. The mindset there was we want to make sure that all the apps are processed at the same time. But that's fantastic feedback, and if you would like to submit a PR or a feature request on the repo for that, we would totally like to consider that.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing that I've heard about people wanting to do is to be able to kind of select different apps and toggle. The whole mindset was kind of enforcing app updates, but that could definitely be an option and something we could look into.
Yeah, it shouldn't be too hard.
No.
Do you guys utilize Jamf app installers with app auto patch, or do you guys just use one over the other?
Sorry, I couldn't hear the first part. Do we use what?
Do you guys use both Jamf app installers as well as app auto patch, or you guys won't use one versus the other?
I use a combination of things, right? So I use Jamf app installers, which is super fantastic for enforcing deadlines, right? So I use Jamf app installers for our business apps. Things like Microsoft apps, Zoom, things like that I know are going to be on the device, right? So kind of going back to the very beginning of App Auto Patch, App Auto Patch was developed because I don't know all the apps that are installed. So we needed a discovery. But those apps that I do know are installed, our business apps, I want to make sure that they have a 3-day deadline, that we're getting reporting on it, right? And so I use Jamf app installers for those type of things. And then I use App Auto Patch for like those other apps that, I don't really know or care are on the device. App Auto Patch will just do its thing.
Yeah, and there are some apps that the installer script doesn't handle well with updating. Like I know every now and then some Microsoft apps just don't seem to update well. So like I do the same thing. I do a mix of both. App installers works great for Microsoft apps and Adobe apps. So I'll use those in there, and then App Auto Patch for everything else.
Yep.
Oh.
So my question is about how does the tool handle errors? For example, if you get a failed update, do you get a reason why the update failed? For example, is it because the network was interrupted or something? And precisely, if the user has the app open during the update, what happens?
Yeah, for sure. So there is logging. So like I said, this tool integrates heavily with Installamator. So those lines that are read to the user in the Swift dialog box are actually being read from the Installamator log. So when Installamator, when the app fails to install, in the Installamator log gets that reason, and that's populated into that list. So you'll see things like user aborted if they chose not to like close the app. Yeah. In the Installamator script, there is a exit code section, and you can see all of those exit codes, and those will be what's presented to the end user, depending on success or failure.
And then one thing you asked about, if the user doesn't want to close it, like you can set the Installamator options to force it to be killed, or if you do have it prompt them, to let them know like this is going to update, and they can choose whether or not to. So you have the option to kind of do one or the other based on those options. Is that one over there?
Hey, I feel like you could kind of get this to work with scoping like different policies, scope different groups, where you're targeting them on different days of the week. But have you guys thought of different workflows to allow tiered approaches for updates, so you don't have updates for like, an application everyone have installed all going to everyone on the same day or within the same week?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I'd say I have an early adopters group that I have the scope to, and I'll set that to like a patch start day of 2, so they all start on Tuesday, and then everyone else will start on Wednesday. So it does break it up a little bit. That's how I have ours set up.
And I hope I'm answering your question correctly, but in my environment, if you look at my Teams channel for my webhook configuration, it's just constantly running. It's just Jamf Pro doing its thing, right? It's going to get it when the computers check in, when it actually runs that policy. So it's not so staggered in my environment, and I would say it's not a huge problem, right? Because it's just doing its thing. I'd say probably a cycle with a good handful of apps, maybe 2 minutes.
Yes. Hey, Rob, and the other colleague, thank you for everything. We are using it in the self-service. And probably the most common problem that I have now is people want to rerun it like not in a, maybe in a day or sometimes the next day. And what I do now is just I remove the auto patch status plist in your application. Is there another way to get it running every time? Because I'm really curious. We had like an approach with Jamf Protect and Jamf Trust. So if the user is not compliant in our environment, then we will block the whole machine and they have to update because there is a security issue. And I want to rerun it like multiple times and not remove the plist. Is there an option for it? Or?
So you want an on-demand running
I want to use it like every time in the self-service and not like to remove the file every time because it takes a really long time. That's another question. To scan first and then check all the updates. Is there not an option to get that list in the machine? You check the last scan and then do the thing again.
So there is a variable, and I'm hoping that this will give you the answer. There's a variable called run discovery, and you can set it to false, and it'll keep that plist on the machine rather than removing it and regenerating through another discovery. So that might help you, where you won't have to necessarily run a discovery every time. It'll shorten that time because it'll just continue to read from the same plist instead of rewriting that plist entirely. Additionally, 3.0 handles that way better. So look forward to that. And then another cool thing that I did see a Mac admin do was actually package up the script and make an app out of it, and they allow the users just to run it from the dock as an on-demand, which was pretty cool.
So I'm sure you already said this and I just missed it, but if you have your policy run, once per day at check-in or whatever, and let's say you have it set to run on like Wednesdays, but the end user defers on the first launch, does it wait until the next Wednesday for that to pop back up, or will it pop up on Thursday?
So currently right now it's version 2.x it's based on how often you trigger it. So like mine, I have the Jamf policy set to run once daily. So if they defer it, it'll just run the next time Jamf triggers it. With 3.0, there will be a launch daemon, which you can actually set how long it waits until it runs again. So if you set it to 24 hours, yes, when they defer, it'll wait that 24 hours to run again. Let's say if you set it to 8 hours, 8 hours later, it'll pop up again and give them the options to defer or not. So yeah, that's how. It'll be a lot easier with 3.0, but currently it's dependent on how often you have the Jamf policy trigger it. Got one back there.
In the dialog box that pops up for the user, is there any customization for your own branding, a link to help desk or documentation, because, say if we go to roll this out, you have to inform users about it. They're usually pretty cautious on, clicking new things that come up, and they also don't read emails well. So just wondering if there's anything in there for that to kind of tell them what it is.
Yeah, so there's definitely options for branding. It's essentially Swift Dialog, right? So we removed all the branding from the demos, but in our environments, we do have all the branding, so people are trustworthy of the dialog box. And you can add info boxes that can take people to links or whatever. So if you had a KB on it, or if you wanted to do like a link to an email or anything like that, you could totally do that. But yeah, the cool thing about this is it's just Swift Dialog, right? So we can add anything that Swift Dialog supports.
Yeah, by default, it'll use the overlay icon. So the app icons that pop up, it'll use your overlay icon for like self-service or anything else you set. But by default, it'll have that on there. All right. Well, thank you, everybody.
If no more questions, I do want to say thank you. I hope that you found the session informative and valuable. Feel free to reach out to me or Andrew on Slack. If you guys know where to find us, we're on App Auto Patch channel. And I do want to do a quick shout out to everyone who's contributed to the App Auto Patch project over the last little bit. And definitely, this isn't an exhaustive list, but Dan sitting here, Andrew standing next to me, the other Andrew, Clark, helps a lot. The other Andrew, Barnett, very great at pull requests and putting those in. Trevor Sisak, which helped with the original part of Swift Dialog integration. Bart, no more needs to be said there. Charles Mangan, which was the original Patchomator creator, and the entire Installmator team, which without them, we wouldn't have Installmator to do these cool things. So that's it. Thank you, guys.